living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
About 1 in 5 Americans over the age of 50 has experienced age discrimination while receiving healthcare services. And according to a United Nations global report on ageism last year, half of the world's population is ageist against older people. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Jacob Churchill, and today we're talking about ageism. What is it? How big of a problem is it really? And what can we do about it? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Talking with us today is Ashton Applewhite, an ageism expert and the author of This Chair Rocks, a manifesto against ageism. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ashton.
My pleasure.
Fantastic. So many of us have heard about ageism, but what are we talking about when we say ageism?
That's a good question, and thank you for framing it that way, because I want to point out that ageism is part of many more conversations than was the case even a year ago. So that's exciting. The dictionary definition is discrimination and prejudice on the basis of age. We are being ageist anytime we make an assumption about someone or a group of people on the basis of how old we think they are. It can be you're too young for that, as well as you're too old for that. It cuts both ways, but because we live in such a youth-obsessed society, older people do bear the brunt.
Okay. And as I understand it, there are a couple different types of racism. Could you tell us about the difference between structural and internalized ageism?
Sure. Everyone is biased. Kids come into the world free of bias. They'll hang out with anyone, but attitudes towards race, towards age, towards ability start to form in early childhood. And in our society, we are barraged by negative messages about how awful it's going to be to get old, how tragic it will be to encounter any kind of impairment. And they become part of our identity unless we stop to challenge them, as I think a lot of us started to do more work around that and racism in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. How am I participating in these systems? We're all racist. We're all ageist. No judgment. But that is internalized bias, right? How these become part of our sense of ourselves. And nothing happens in the world unless we do the first hard thing of confronting our own bias, trying to, and I'm happy to talk more about how we might do that. That is the internal personal work of ageism. Like all prejudice, it is also reflected in the systems, in the policies, in the structures around us, in the workplace with, systems that prevent older people from getting hired, that make it much harder for older workers to get if we lose our jobs, we are seldom hired back at the same pay scale. In dating life, tons of evidence that shows that, it's hard, especially for women as we get older, to find a partner if we put our real age on our websites, on our profiles, which I would hope we wouldn't have to lie about it. In medicine, again, happy to talk about this in greater detail. Buckets of evidence shows that older people in general receive less care, lousier care, often no care at all when a condition, an ache, a pain is written off by a doctor, a healthcare professional, or even the person themselves, right? Oh, I'm just getting old. That's just part of this. Or the doctor saying, at your age, what do you expect? That is, that's structural ageism that can have lethal consequences.
Wow. Sounds like a very far-reaching thing, this ageism.
Well, it's, aging is the one universal human experience, and ageism is the one prejudice every single one of us experiences.
Wow. Well, it goes without saying that any form of discrimination is very wrong and hurtful, and those are some great examples of how that can happen. But what are some of the negative impacts of age discrimination, specifically?
Well, of course, that depends very much on who you are and what your circumstances are. We know that 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 your experience as a man is different from mine. I am a straight white woman with considerable economic privileges, which shields me from certain negative, difficulties in life, certain forms of prejudice. But also, I'm a woman. The world is full of sexism and misogyny. I am older, and according to the cultural script, I should stop talking right now and just sort of get, silently leave the stage. So the impacts of ageism are very different for each of us. I think, if you have rent to pay or a mortgage to pay or kids to feed, and you are north of 40, that age 40 is when the federal Anti-Discrimination and Employment Acts kicks in to protect workers against being discriminated against in the workplace on the basis of age. So, if you can't find a job, that is an extremely specific impact. If you wake up and look in the mirror and go, what the hell happened? And we all have those moments because the evidence of the fact that you are no longer young seems to you to be a source of insecurity, the pressures on women to look young are so fierce. If you let that affect your sense of yourself and your value as a human being, that is an effect. It's much more of an effect, back to individual circumstances, if you are a woman, because we are punished in the workforce and our social lives for looking, older, for actually having a few wrinkles. If you have, I can't think of a circumstance where it is not relevant because everyone moves through life. With men, the discourse is less that you don't have to so much look young. It's okay to be one of those TV anchor guys with the distinguished white sideburns, but you age well, quote unquote, by continuing to move like younger versions of yourself. Think about sexual performance as a very obvious one. We can't keep on having sex the way we did when we were 18. For most of us, that's a very good thing, especially for women.
Wow, fantastic. Well, you've done a great job kind of summing up what ageism is and the role that it plays in our world. We need to take a break, but coming up next, there are laws against ageism in the workplace. But do they actually work, and how well do they work? Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We are still talking with ageism expert Ashton Applewhite. Thanks again for joining us today, Ashton. Hollywood and American. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Hollywood and American culture are very often anti-aging. There's a lot of pressure on celebrities and people in general to look as young as they can. What kinds of impact do those pressures have on us?
Well, they have a lot more impact if you're female, and they have a lot more impact if you are in the public eye. But we're all in the public eye, unless you live in a cave, right?
Right.
There's a wonderful quote by a scholar named Amos Wilson that if you want to understand any problem in America, don't look at who suffers from it, look at who profits from it, right? Think about who benefits from this drumbeat that aging is a negative thing, and that changes, normal, natural changes in your physiological function and in your appearance are somehow problems or symptoms of disease that we need to spend lots of money and lots of effort to combat. So we're looking at the beauty industry, we're looking at the pharmaceutical industry, we're looking at the entertainment industry in particular. But it trickles down to every sphere of public life. If you walk into a business meeting or a party and you are judged by your appearance, it diminishes us all. I mean, one thing we know from the women's movement is that women have more to offer than pretty faces or less pretty faces. Obviously, we have a tremendous example with the body acceptance movement, right? Which is, we have tons of templates out there and examples of how people have mobilized against other forms of prejudice. And we do see increasing use of, taking fashion as example, older models, curvier models. So all that, and we know that representation matters. We know that if young Black girls don't ever see people who look like them being scientists or being, actors for that matter. I mean, the movie industry is making progress, but it's still mostly run by white men. We need to enforce representation on the basis of age, in addition to on the basis of gender and appearance and ethnicity and sexual orientation and all the things. We need to add age to that list and speak up when we don't see age diversity in any sphere.
Fantastic answer. If we could shift for a moment back to the healthcare industry, how does age discrimination impact mental health care among older adults?
Well, it's a common stereotype. I mean, the basis of all prejudice is stereotypes, right? The notion that everyone who belongs to insert name of group, is alike in some way. That's never the case. They're always misleading, but especially when it comes to age, because the longer we live, the more different from one another we become. Heterogeneity increases with age. One of the stereotypes is that older people are depressed. It's not true. In fact, older people enjoy better mental health on average than younger or middle-aged people. There's this U-curve of happiness. Go ahead and Google it. I didn't believe it when I encountered it for the first time. That shows that people are happiest at the beginnings and the ends of our lives. If you are in that middle-aged trough, one of the things that makes it a trough is the assumption that it's just going to get worse because you're going to get older. That assumption is not good for us, right? And another way ageism affects the mental health of older people is the assumption that there's zero truth to the idea that old dogs can't learn new tricks, that older people aren't interested in learning new things. Some of us aren't. But some younger people aren't curious either, right? It has nothing to do with age. It has to do with temperament and opportunity and circumstance, right? So if a doctor, and older people benefit just as much from interventions like psychotherapy. So the presumption that older people are not going to benefit from psychotherapy is another example of ageism that is really damaging. Psychotherapy and other, interventions for mental health. I don't mean to reduce it to psychotherapy.
All right. Well, we mentioned before the break that there are laws against ageism in the workplace. Could you talk a little bit about how those laws work to protect older adults?
Sure. Well, it's a federal law, which means it reaches across, every jurisdiction, that says that you cannot discriminate against employees on the basis of age after age 40 and beyond. And let's think how now people are working longer, right? Both because we want to and because many people have to. They have no choice because of their economic circumstances. So age 40 isn't that far through your career, right?
Right.
Or your work life. So it is a good law. The problem is that it is enforced by the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, which is understaffed and underfunded. So it is fairly easy to submit a claim, but a lot of the claims never make it all the way through because they are overburdened, and it is harder to prove an age discrimination case because of a Supreme Court ruling that requires that you prove, unlike with gender discrimination, sex discrimination, or race discrimination, you have to show that age was the sole reason you were discriminated against. So the burden of proof is higher. That law has to be changed. AARP is championing a law called, POWADA, is easy to remember. POWADA, Protect Older Workers Against Discrimination Act. It has passed the House of Representatives with bipartisan support. So urge your senators to lower the burden of proof so that it becomes easier to prove age discrimination in the workplace.
Fantastic. We have maybe time for just one more short question. Is there anything else that employers are doing outside of the law to protect against age discrimination in the workplace?
Well, I don't think employers are doing as little as they can because it's expensive. And, why should they bother? Nothing changes in the world of employment or the world of culture without protest from people. That's why, laws don't change people's behavior. People's behavior changes the law. So that's why I'm in the business I'm in, which is to encourage and support and inform a grassroots movement like the women's movement, to provoke culture change in how we think about age and aging, and compel the institutions around us, to do the same. In the workplace, companies will be more egalitarian and enforce DEI. There's a ton of DEI initiatives out there. Age is often not part of that. So that's one thing you can do, is check your, see if it's in there in your employer, in your employee handbook, and if not, insist that it is. There also need to be consequences for when it is just lip service or a training, that people sit through, but nothing has changed a year down the road. And HR, human resources, age discrimination in hiring is a tremendous problem. Educate the HR people who are ageist. Some may be aware of it, most probably are not. So there need to be consequences for the companies and that do not enforce this, and then implement those policies from the top down. We know that if the people in the C-suite don't embody those changes and actually make them part of their own practice internally and in the company, it doesn't change.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashton. We really appreciate all of that information. We do need to pause for another break, unfortunately, but when we come back, what needs to be done to break negative stereotypes and treat older adults with the respect that they deserve? And how can we all do our part? Stay tuned and find out. Welcome back. Ageism expert and author Ashton Applewhite is still with us to talk about ageism. Thanks again for joining us, Ashton. I understand you are a co-founder of the Old School Clearinghouse. Can you take a moment to tell us a little bit about their mission and the work they do?
I would love to. I had one of those bright ideas that you have no idea how much work it's going to be to actually make it happen, but that the anti-ageism movement is young. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a central repository of all the best resources to educate yourself about ageism and how to address it between our ears and in the world around us? So with two colleagues, I co-founded the Old School Anti-Ageism Clearinghouse. The website is oldschool.info, and there are hundreds of resources, all free except the books. So that's the idea behind Old School. And we're also becoming a hub for people to meet up. We have a free weekly Zoom session anyone can join. So sign up for the newsletter. We will not spam you. We will not give it away, and find out how and when to find us online, in addition to seeing what's on offer there.
All right. And getting back to some of the other ageism topics here, we have, what can we do if we hear someone say something ageist or age discriminatory against older people? Is there anything that we can do about that?
Yeah, older people or younger people. It could also be what could that kid possibly know? That's ageist too, right? I started a blog called Yo, Is This Ageist? To answer those questions. Is something ageist, and what could we do? The odds are, that if a similar comment or behavior on the basis of someone's race or someone's gender wouldn't pass muster, then it's probably ageist, and it's not okay. And if we don't say something, nothing changes. But if it's your boss, if it's in public, it may not be safe for you to do so. So I just want to say there's no blanket answer. It depends on the person. It depends on your circumstances. Every Thanksgiving, there are a slew of internet articles about what to do, about racist Uncle Mort at the Thanksgiving table when he says something. I'm using that as a placeholder, but it's true. All the things we know about how to address inappropriate microaggressions, comments in the forms of other forms of bias, also apply to ageism. A really good all-purpose rejoinder is, what do you mean by that? Are you still working? What do you mean by that? You look good for your age. What do you mean by that? You look good for your age too. You want to provoke reflection on the part of the person. In the case of you look good, they meant it as a compliment. It's not a compliment. And when you put it, sort of lob the ball gently back into their court, not in an accusatory way, because you don't want to put people on the defensive. They just dig in and have them question, why that I meant that to be nice. Why didn't it feel nice? You're so articulate for a young person, for a person of color. Compliment? What do you mean by that? Not actually a compliment. And it is in that uncomfortable moment of reflection. And I have them all the time. I am constantly putting my foot in my mouth. You're going to screw up. But if you do it in a gentle way, with good intentions, you will learn, and so will the person, and you'll get better at it, and so will they.
And we've heard that there's a lot of research that negative views of your own self-aging can actually decrease your lifespan. Do you have any tips about how people can look at their own aging in a more positive light?
I would say just look at your own aging. Educate yourself about age and aging and look at your own attitudes. Most of us don't want to think about it. They're like, ooh, this getting old thing is either never going to happen to me. Good luck with that. Or I don't want to think about it. Imagine a toddler drumming their feet on the ground. The more you learn about aging, the less terror it holds and the less grip it has, because look around you. The world is full of older people in the world in all kinds of interesting ways. And so the most important step is to look at your own attitudes. I don't like to say we need a more positive attitude towards aging. We need a more realistic and informed attitude towards aging, which is more positive because most of the stereotypes out there are negative. So it's inherently more positive. And I want to mention the wealth of data that you mentioned that shows that attitudes towards aging affect how our minds and bodies function at the cellular level. People with more accurate attitudes not only live longer, an average of 7.5 years longer, we walk faster, we recover faster from illness, even from severe disability. The latest study, not the latest, but one I love to cite, shows that we are less likely to get Alzheimer's even if we have the gene that predisposes us to the disease. Unlearning is not easy, but it is free. And if you want to start, go to oldschool.info and look around.
All right. Well, we are about out of time for the day, but is there anything else that you'd like to share with us or make sure that we hear before we leave today?
I could offer a tip or two about how to start this process of change. Sure. One would be, we live in a very age-segregated society here in the U.S., and one of the ways in which we all reinforce this, no judgment, is that when we walk into a room, we tend to make a beeline for people our own age. Try not to do that. Try to break that habit. At a dinner party, at a business meeting, whatever. Go talk to the person who is the most different from you in age, because making an older or younger friend or just a relationship, could be a business relationship, is in itself an anti-ageist act, right? And then you diversify your friend group age-wise, just like if everyone you're hanging out with is the same ethnicity, try and reach out across those borders as well. And another little thing to think about is how you use the words old and young. Right? We tend to say, I hear people say, I don't feel old. What does old feel like? What do you mean by that? Right? We might mean you don't feel invisible. You don't feel incompetent. You don't feel sexless. Use those words. Instead of saying, I feel young, say, I feel with it. I feel energetic. Use the actual emotion or characteristic that you are referring to, instead of using old to mean insert scary, awful thing, and young to mean positive, upbeat thing, because that's an ageist habit also, and it'll help you reframe internally how you think about aging itself.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your insight, advice, and expertise, Ashton. We really appreciate you joining us today. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for the moment. Thank you so much for watching at home. And we'll be coming back to you next week. Until then, please stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-5433. 888-408-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the Healthy Living for Life logo. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.